I turn the music up, I got my records on. I shut the world outside until the lights come on. Maybe the streets are alive, maybe the trees are gone. I feel my heart stop beating to my favorite song. Beating to my favorite song.
Hello and welcome to the Sports Diplomat Show. Please visit our website at thesportsdiplomat.weebly.com.
Also, follow us on Twitter at Diplomat Sports. Tweet us your questions and we'll be sure to get back to you. Hello and welcome to this college football segment of the Sports Diplomat Show. The first game we're going to be talking about today is number 1 Alabama at Tennessee.
I like Alabama in this one, mainly because they're such a well-coached football team with Nick Saban, and they have a power running game that they use to do. And A.J. McCarron can get the job done. Of course, their defense is one of the top in the nation. So I got Bama winning this one.
Even though A.J. McCarron is the number 2 rated quarterback in the nation, he's still one of the most underrated QBs in the nation. You just don't hear his name, but he should be known, and he's not. And Alabama, they're just too unstoppable. Alabama wins this one easy.
Yeah, Alabama has been a real surprise this season. People thought since they lost more people on defense they lost a lot of starters on that strong defense, and they come back and they're better than they were last year. Even though I think Tennessee can give them a run because it's at Tennessee, a lot of fans, big stadium, but Alabama is just, they control the game. A.J. McCarron, like you said, is great. I think Alabama, it's close in the first half, like all Alabama games, but I think second half they blow it wide open.
I don't think it'll be close. I think Alabama will just kill them pretty convincingly.
All right, the second game we're talking about today is number 6 LSU at number 20 Texas A&M.
I like LSU in this one. After they beat South Carolina, I think they will come. There's Les Miles. They got that team ready. They've changed ever since. They were just sliding by up until Florida, and it finally hurt them. But I mean, they'll be ready. This team has a chance of going to the national championship yet again because they're ready this year, like they were last year, and they have a good chance of winning out.
LSU, they were kind of what most people thought was overrated at the beginning of the season. So. But I think with the win over South Carolina, they've kind of proven they still deserve to be top 10 worthy. So I think they just keep that lead and just keep rolling and beat Texas A&M by a decent margin.
I disagree. Texas A&M played Florida tougher than LSU played Florida. LSU beat South Carolina because they played in Death Valley. They are unstoppable in Death Valley, and they're 18-2 in games against after a loss, and Texas A&M might be one of the loudest venues in the SEC now. Called home of the 12th man.
Mm-hmm.
Manziel, their quarterback, he's the number 1 Heisman contender out of the SEC as a freshman. And he's putting up insane numbers, though he does make key mistakes, and I see him making mistakes in this game. But LSU just, even with the win against South Carolina, hasn't impressed me. I don't think they won that in an impressive way. South Carolina that game was like a flip of a coin who would have won it in the end. Yeah,
I mean, I would say South Carolina lost it more than LSU won it. Cause just the turnover at the end and how, I mean, LSU, they did impress me because I did have South Carolina win that one. So LSU impressed me. So that's why I think they'll win this, because I think Les Miles has got this team back on track.
All right. The number 1 game this week that we're talking about is number 4 Kansas State at number 17 West Virginia.
K-State, I think, has got this. Look, Colin Klein, highly rated QB. I mean, there's not many people better than him. And West Virginia coming off that loss, I think that's just a kickstart for them to keep losing. They had that one loss, and I just think they're just going to start rolling downhill and just keep losing, honestly. And Colin Klein, probably one of the most underrated QBs with A.J. McCarron.
As you know, I think Geno Smith is the best quarterback in the NCAA. But their defense is really bad. They are not impressive at all. But I mean, I'm gonna go with Dana and company, and I got West Virginia winning this one. And I just think that they got their tail whooped. So I think they will come back and they'll be prepared. I mean, this team, they'll give them a fight. That's why I got West Virginia winning.
I'm gonna go with the team on the road, Kansas State. Colin Klein, after the loss last week, Geno Smith still has better numbers, but Heisman Trophy is the best player on the best team. So Colin Klein, of course, jumped him in the Heisman standings. He was number 2. Now he's number 1. No, he's not going to impress you with his arm. This guy's a grinder. He doesn't have a cannon, but he can run the ball. He can pass the ball. He gets the job done. This team has played well all season. Now, they've had 2 close games the past 2 weeks. For the most part, the scores don't always reflect how close the game actually was. But, I mean, this team has come to play football this season. Very underrated team. Very rarely get national TV time. Now that they are, people are going to be watching because you see the high-powered offense of both teams. But West Virginia's defense hasn't showed up all season. It's not going to start, and that's the reason they're going to lose this game. And Kansas State has good defense. So.
They do. I just think West Virginia's offense will be too much for them to handle. I think they're impressive everywhere. They didn't show up at all last week. But, I mean, I think they will this week.
To me, Colin Klein has always been a better QB than Geno Smith all season. Simply because Geno Smith, he's got a lot to work with, so it makes it a lot easier for him. Colin Klein has to make plays. Geno Smith doesn't necessarily have to make plays for himself.
I mean, Geno Smith does have the best receiving core, at least one of them.
And it makes it a lot easier for him.
Yeah. But, I mean, he's talking about who can be better against each other. He's talking about who's better quarterback by himself, for next year getting drafted. Then, I mean, yeah, Colin Klein. But, if you're talking right now, you consider the weapons, you consider offensive line. That's why I like Geno.
One thing is, Colin Klein, I agree with what you said. He makes the plays. Last week against Texas Tech, Geno Smith, I can't tell you how many times he had an open shot to run for the first down. And I know they teach quarterbacks, keep your eyes down the field always. But Geno's afraid to run the ball. He will not run the ball. He would throw the ball away when he had a clear shot for 2 or 3 yards on a 3rd and 3. Colin Klein, this guy, he's kind of he's like Connor Shaw, but I think he's way better Connor Shaw because he has a better arm. He can make plays with his feet. He changes the gameplay completely. It's really hard to prepare for him, and West Virginia's defense can't prepare for a normal offense, let alone this offense. So I think I agree with what you said. Colin Klein is a better quarterback than Geno Smith. His stats come from the plays he makes, not yards after the catch. I like what Kansas State in this game because quarterback play. Last night you saw NFL. This is different, but the quarterbacks. He asked Phillip Rivers who he's playing against. He said, "I'm playing against Peyton Manning. It's quarterback against quarterback." Most quarterbacks don't even acknowledge that, but it is the truth. Colin Klein versus Geno Smith. You will see the top, in my opinion, top 2 quarterbacks in the NCAA. Mm-hmm. Thank you for turning into the college football segment this week. We'll get back to you next week.
Yeah. Welcome you. Hey.
Hello and welcome to this NFL edition of the Sports Diplomat Show. It's week 7, and the first game we're going to talk about is Detroit at Chicago.
Detroit just hasn't seemed to be up to the level they have been last year. They just haven't played like they did last year, so I got Chicago winning this just because I'm not convinced that Detroit's still as good as they were.
I like Chicago's front 7. I also think that Detroit, last year they looked really impressive. This year they haven't. 15 penalties last week, and they didn't really beat the Eagles. The Eagles beat themselves. They blew it. I just think Chicago will overpower them, and I got Chicago winning this one.
I've got Detroit winning this game because quarterback play. Cutler tends to make a lot of mistakes, and I think that Matthew Stafford is going to be able to get his team over the hump. They have been a terrible fourth quarter team this year. Terrible. And now I think that they need this win, and I think they're going to be coached up, ready to go to get this win. I'm not saying that they're going to turn their season around by any means, but every team gets that one win they're not expected to usually, and I think that this is a game that's going to happen because they really need that foundation win to get that team built up, and they'll just keep working from there.
Yeah, but Stafford hasn't looked really great by any means either.
Just not mistakes. Just not making.
He made some.
He's not flashy.
Yeah, but it helps when you have a guy named Calvin Johnson who's arguably the best receiver. So he's gonna be good, but I just think at the end of the day, Chicago, the other team around him will help Cutler beat him out.
the second game we're talking about is Pittsburgh at Cincinnati.
Pittsburgh, their record's not great. They've been playing all right, but I've got Cincinnati winning this game. Cincinnati, to me, will have the better offense. So I've got Cincinnati winning this, and it's at Cincinnati.
I got Pitt winning this game mainly because they have to. This is a game that they feel like they have to win. Mike Tomlin, they know it. They cannot afford to go 2-4, and they're going to be playing pretty much for their season right here. Like this is everything goes out right here. I like Pitt winning this one. They got some guys back. Harrison, their guys are getting adapted to the game, and I love Ben Roethlisberger of his ability to move around. So I like Pitt.
Pitt's been really inconsistent this season. You look, the past 2 games, they played about the same on both sides of the ball. They barely beat Philadelphia, and then they lose a close one to Tennessee. And it's not the normal Pittsburgh we've seen the past few years. It's their offense is playing great, and their defense is losing games for them. When it used to be their offense would lose games for them. So I think that like you said, guys are coming back. They're getting game ready. I think Pittsburgh's this is that win that's gonna kind of like Detroit. It's gonna flip their season around because if they get behind Cincy, I don't see a lot of hope of them beating Baltimore. And then you see Baltimore and Cincy kind of being 1 and 2 in the division. Cincy will probably get the wild card spot. Other than that, I mean Pitt, they really need this. They really need a win here. The next game we're talking about is Baltimore at Houston.
Baltimore coming into the season was my Super Bowl favorite, even without Terrell Suggs. But now that they've lost Ray Lewis, and I just don't see Baltimore winning many more games, honestly. I mean, they'll still be all right. They'll finish the season pretty strong, but especially this game, I've got Houston winning.
Ray Lewis is more than just a football player. What he brought to that locker room, to that team, his inspirational speeches and stuff, he provided a lot. He got everybody else ready to play football around him. So I think that'll be a huge loss. Not only is he a great football player, but he lost a lot. But, I mean, I got Houston, mainly because their offense, Alex Smith, he knows how to work the ball around. I just like Houston. Even though they lost last week, they'll be fired up, and they'll be ready to get back on the football field and play. I think they'll win.
This game to me comes down to which team has the least amount of injuries on defense, and that is Houston. They're a better defensive team. They've lost their star linebacker Cushing, who's been playing since he came out of Southern Cal. He's great. He's a huge loss for him. But on the other side of the ball, you already had Terrell Suggs out for Baltimore. Now you take out their next best player, or even probably their number 1 player on defense and number 1 leader on the whole football team in Ray Lewis. And they've got a few key secondary guys out, which, I mean, they're hurting on that part. I still think it might be a close game. Baltimore's offense knows now they need to step it up. And they're not playing bad, but they're not playing like everybody expected them to this season. So I think they'll step it out. It'll be a close game, but I think Houston wins.
I mean, Cushing is good, but he's not Ray Lewis good. I mean, that's what you're saying, injury-wise. That's why Houston is ahead, because they don't have everybody hurt like Baltimore does.
All right, next game we're talking about is Seattle at San Francisco.
I've got San Fran winning this simply because San Francisco's more experienced, Seattle's not. Seattle's a much younger team, and with the coaching of Harbaugh, San Francisco's got this.
I'm not sold on Seattle quite yet. Pete Carroll's doing a tremendous job getting this team. He's building this team, but I like Harbaugh and crew to win this one, mainly because of their front seven and ability to attack the quarterback, along with Alex Smith's ability to just control the game and maintain it. That's what I like.
If it wasn't for Harbaugh, Alex Smith would not be the starter at San Francisco.
He probably wouldn't even be there.
I'm going to go with Seattle winning this game because of their front seven. Their defensive line, probably one of the best in the NFL. And you saw what a good defensive line did to Alex Smith last week. He played probably one of the worst games in his career. They pulled him and put Colin Kaepernick in, which says a lot about the coaching style of Harbaugh, but you don't see that happen a lot to your starter in the NFL. And I think Seattle's defense is just as good as New York, the Giants. I think they'll do the exact same thing to Alex Smith this weekend. It's very rare to see San Francisco lose 2 in a row. Also, at home 2 in a row. As fans there are not happy with the performance against the Giants. But I think Seattle's going to come in and give them another loss this season.
One advantage for Seattle is their secondary is also one of the best, too, along with their D-line. So that can make life hard for Alex Smith.
All right, another big question this week is, does Pittsburgh have the strength to make it to the playoffs this season?
I don't know that it necessarily comes down to how Pitt plays. I think it comes down to how Cincinnati and the Ravens finish. Because with the Ravens' injuries, and Cincinnati not always the strongest, not always you can count on them, I think it comes down to how those two teams do. Because all three of those teams made it to the playoffs last year. And I don't think we'll see that again this year, but it all comes down to how those two teams finish.
I actually think Pitt wins the division. I really think they do. I think once they win this game, and if they don't, then I'm going to change my mind. But I think right now Pitt is going to make the playoffs because it's a tradition there. If they don't, all heck will be broken loose. But I like the way where Pitt is heading. I mean, they're getting guys back, and Baltimore, they're losing guys. They're doing the opposite. So, I mean, I think Pitt is good.
This week is a must-win for Pittsburgh. Cincinnati is probably the closest contender for a wild card spot. I see Pittsburgh going 1-1 against Baltimore this year, and then 2-0 against everybody like Cincy, and so I think they'll get wild card spot definitely, just because of how strong they've been playing. If they can just work on finishing games defensively, they kind of get slack in the second half. They're up and then they blow leads, like against Philadelphia. They blew a lead, but they still won the game. And then last week, the defense was kind of non-existent in the fourth quarter. They let the Tennessee Titans, who were an average team, average offense. They didn't even have. They had Hasselbeck playing quarterback, and he's not even their set starter. Jake Locker was hurt, so he's older. He's got experience, so that I guess you can argue that point. But a second-string quarterback drove down the field with a mediocre offense and kick game-winning field goal could beat you. And Cincinnati and Baltimore are not mediocre offenses. They're a lot better. So I think that if Pittsburgh can get over this game, they'll go on to win the wild card spot, and they'll make it to the playoffs. Thank you for tuning into this segment of NFL on the Sports Diplomat Show. We'll get back to you next week.